in the states on the issues of vaccine rollout and more. To discuss this, let's bring in my panel. From Canberra, the Minister Assisting the Attorney-General, Amanda Stoker, and Labor MP, Joel Fitzgibbon. I'll start with you if I can, Joel. There's a history, obviously, around COAG. There's now this new beast national cabinet. Your former colleague, former leader, ALP's Simon Crean, he's mounted a defence of national cabinet. He thinks it should be kept post-COVID. I don't. What do you think?
It's a really interesting conversation, Peter. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we called them Premiers' conferences. So we've had various models over the years. I think Simon's not wrong. I think there's a role for National Cabinet, but I think it is only necessary when there is an emergency situation like that we've been going through with COVID-19, a global financial crisis could provide another example. And I can't see how a National Cabinet can possibly replace the old architecture we had around COAG, where we had lots of public servants giving resourcing and advice to lots of different COAG committees across every portfolio. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know what's been happening with those COAG committees since National Cabinet has been meeting. I would like to think they are still operating because I think they are critical to the successful operations of the government.
Yeah, I think the Prime Minister abolished COAG at the start of the process, but I'll go back and check. I guess my concern is none of it's binding, Joel.
Yeah, I just don't understand how a meeting of leaders could do all the work of the committees that were typically chaired by the various ministers. For example, for a short time I chaired the COAG committee covering the agriculture sector, and I used to meet with the state agriculture ministers, and we had all the resources of a secretariat and those behind them. You can't have the leaders of the nation meeting together to deal with every issue across every portfolio. So I think we all need to do a little bit of research, see what's been going on.
Yeah, look, I agree with you on that point. I'll go back and do some homework with myself. Talk to me, Amanda, if you can. Queensland opening up. You know, there's been a battle up there with closed borders, a lot of lack of compassion for Queensland's own people by the Premier. The Mayor, Tom Tate, says businesses won't survive if you don't open up quickly. She's still sticking, she says, to some sort of timetable. But she also then says in the other breath, come the 17th of December, whether those milestones are met or not, you're opening up. So it begs the question, what has this all been about?
It does beg that question, and while I am grateful to see at last something resembling compliance with the national plan, something resembling a map out of this cycle of perpetual border closures and lockdowns, we have had to drag her there kicking and screaming. It's frustrating though, and I hope an eye-opener for Queenslanders about the fact that this Premier can't be trusted, that last week or the week before we were being told that unless there was an urgent injection of federal funds, there could be no opening up because our hospitals weren't in a fit state. And now we have the Chief Health Officer and the Premier telling us, no, everything's fine and it's always been fine in our hospitals. Well, which one is it? Either it's a craven shakedown for cash or there's a problem with the hospitals. You can't have it both ways all the time. And in the meantime, while they've been playing those sorts of games, real Queenslanders in their thousands, some of them in makeshift refugee camps at the New South Wales border, suffer enormous hardship. Queensland cannot open soon enough.
Right, Joel, I want to ask you another question. It was prompted about some evidence in the IBAC inquiry in Victoria. This is the branch-taking inquiry. IBAC is investigating a scheme where a whole lot of Victorian MPs employed relatives, political and factional allies, in taxpayer jobs in their electorate offices. Now, I'm curious, Tony Abbott banned the employment of family members inside the Liberal Party, the National Party, back in November 2013. Copped a fair bit of heat for it, I might add, too, from some of his colleagues. What's the status quo inside federal Labor? Can you hire your family?
I don't believe anyone does, but I'd have to check that, Peter, because you are right. Tony Abbott did ban it, although I don't know whether he really had the authority to enforce it. I'd have to check that. But I'm surprised.
He did, ministerial direction. Ministerial direction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we were late to change, in my view, because the New South Wales Parliament banned it, I'm pretty sure, maybe decades ago. I recall being told many years ago that you couldn't employ family members of the New South Wales Parliament. So the Victorian Parliament, it seems, is still living in the 20th century. But I think you can be pretty confident that after this debacle, it will be sorted out.
It's worth observing here, Peter, that...
Please,
sorry, I beg your pardon. It's worth observing here that these have cropped up as circumstances in Victoria, in circumstances where they have an independent, broad-based anti-corruption commission. And yet, without a structure of that nature, although there are many integrity agencies at the federal level, there were cultural safeguards and rules put in place voluntarily to guard against these kinds of conflicts of interest. It means that while some see an integrity commission as a silver bullet, in fact, it can bring with it its own harms, and you can often achieve more without that kind of a structure.
And even when you have it, as you can see in these cases, it doesn't capture everything. Amanda Stoker, Fitzgibbon, appreciate your time.